Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere you probably don't want to stay for long. Medieval Europe. The year? Let's say 1323. You're dropped into a village at dawn, wearing a scratchy tunic, standing ankle deep in, well, hopefully just mud. There's smoke in the air, the distant clang of a blacksmith, and someone nearby is shouting in a language that sounds like English if it were being chewed on by a goat. And the first thing you realize? It stinks. Like really, really stinks. That's the scent of your new home. Damp straw, old sweat, and the faint whiff of something rotting behind the hut. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You rub sleep from your eyes, fingers stiff with cold. The sun's not fully up yet, just a pale smear on the horizon, and you can see your breath misting in the thin light. You're in a hut made from wattle and daub, which is a fancy way of saying sticks, mud, and a prayer. The roof is thatched, bits of straw poking through the rafters. Every breath carries the sharp tang of smoke from the central hearth. No chimney, just a hole in the roof that's too small to do much good. A rooster crows, though it sounds more like it's complaining than greeting the day. You shuffle to the doorway, push aside a rough wool curtain, and step outside. The ground is hard and frozen in places, soft and muddy in others. Chickens scratch at the dirt, a couple of goats are bleating in the distance, and you're pretty sure the neighbor's pig just stole something from your garden. There's no time to linger, though. You've got work to do, and even in this early hour, the village is already stirring. A blacksmith's hammer rings out, rhythmic and reassuring, while smoke coils from other huts like thin ghosts. You nod to a passing neighbor who's carrying a bucket that smells suspiciously like, well, let's not dwell on that. Historians still argue whether medieval people woke before dawn because of necessity or habit. Either way, you're up with the sun, like it or not. Breakfast is a distant dream. First, you've got to haul water from the village well. The well's a gathering spot. People swap gossip, news, and complaints as they wait their turn. Today, you overhear talk of a traveling merchant with spices from the Holy Land. Someone says he's selling peppercorns for a king's ransom, though nobody here has even a pauper's purse. You feel the chill in your bones as you heave the heavy bucket up from the well, the rope scratching your palms raw. The water's cold and clear, though your back already aches from the weight. On your way back to the hut, you pass a woman stirring a pot over an open fire. The smell makes your stomach rumble. Barley porridge, probably, or maybe a thin vegetable stew if she's lucky. You'll eat later, if there's enough. For now, your stomach growls in protest. A memory of modern breakfasts, cereal, toast, scrambled eggs, flits through your mind. But here, you're grateful for a crust of bread. You duck back into your hut, careful not to bang your head on the low lintel. Inside, the dim light flickers from the hearth, and you sit on a three-legged stool that wobbles under your weight. You tear off a piece of yesterday's bread, chew slowly. It's hard and stale, and you're pretty sure it's got more flavor from the smoke than from anything else. There's a jug of small beer, weak, barely alcoholic, but safer than the water, and you drink it down, washing away the dry crumbs. Your hands are rough, the nails broken from work. You look around the hut, noticing the spider webs in the corners. the patched clothes hanging from pegs, the tools lined up in careful order. This is your life now, and it's as normal as sunrise. And yet, there's a comfort to it. The quiet hum of the village waking up, the way the frost sparkles on the thatch, the gentle warmth of the hearth. You're still alive, and for now, that's enough. You glance out the door again. The sun is climbing higher, painting the world in soft gold. Your breath still fogs in the cold air, but you're getting used to it. You're even starting to appreciate the rhythm of it all, the chores, the neighborly nods, the distant clang of the blacksmith's hammer. You can almost forget that your feet are wet and your stomach is empty. You head back out into the morning, your breath already a memory in the warming air. The cold still bites, though. Your toes are numb in worn-out shoes, if you're even lucky enough to have them. Most likely, you're trudging through the mud in rough woolen socks, feeling every icy puddle seep in. Your tunic itches where it rubs your shoulders raw, the coarse wool chafing with every move. There's no such thing as a seamless stitch here. Each thread a small annoyance, a reminder that comfort was never a medieval priority. You're wrapped in layers of homespun, each one heavy and scratchy, each one damp from last night's mist. You rub at your nose, which is already red from the cold. Historians still argue whether medieval folk really cared about layering properly, or if they just suffered through the seasons. Either way, you're feeling it now. Your breath clouds the air as you walk, your fingers stiff and clumsy. The village is awake and moving, men with carts groaning under wood and straw, women with baskets clutched close, children running barefoot through puddles that would freeze your modern heart. You catch snatches of chatter, gossip about a neighbor's new pig, worries about the weather turning again. The air smells of wet earth and wood smoke, mingled with the faint tang of manure. Your feet slip a little on the icy path, and you nearly take a tumble, arms flailing to keep your balance. A passing farmer chuckles, and you can't help but give a half smile. It's a small moment of shared struggle, an unspoken camaraderie in the face of another cold morning. You pass the communal oven, where someone's already lit the fire. The scent of baking bread is a small mercy, a fleeting promise of warmth and something to chew on later. Of course, you're not exactly first in line. There's a system to these things, and you're just another hungry mouth in the queue. Inside the hut, your breath still fogs in the air, the thin warmth of the hearth doing little to chase off the morning chill. Your clothes cling to you, damp and scratchy, and you're sure you'll be itching until summer. You glance around, noticing the cracks in the walls where the wind winds through, the worn places in the floor where generations have paced. A neighbor stops by, a woman with a lined face and a basket of kindling. She offers you a nod and a small bundle of sticks, an unspoken kindness in a world where every scrap of warmth counts. You accept it with numb fingers, grateful for the gesture. In medieval times, sharing meant survival. You try not to think about how long the winter lasts here. There's a rumor it might be worse than last year. Colder, longer, hungrier. You shake the thought away. There's work to be done, and you can't afford to let dread steal your morning. You step outside again, the cold slapping your cheeks like an unwelcome greeting. The blacksmith's hammer still rings in the distance, a steady heartbeat of iron and effort. You pass by his forge, feeling the brief kiss of heat on your frozen face. He's working a horseshoe, sweat steaming from his brow despite the chill. You wonder if he ever feels warm enough, or if even he carries winter in his bones. Your fingers fumble at your belt, checking the small pouch that holds what little you have, maybe a couple of coppers, a bit of stale bread wrapped in cloth. It's not much, but it's yours. You watch a pair of children chase each other around a wagon, their laughter bright and fleeting in the cold air. For a moment, you almost forget the ache in your toes. Mainstream historians agree, medieval folk had to be tough. Layers of wool, calloused hands, and a constant battle with the cold were as much a part of daily life as prayer or bread. But there are also those fringe tidbits that historians can't quite prove, like the claim that medieval folk would rub goose fat on their skin to trap in heat. You're not sure you'd go that far, but in this chill, you're tempted to believe it. As you trudge along, you feel the weight of the day ahead. There's no break, no pause button, only the constant push to keep moving. You catch a whiff of someone's breakfast, a pot of barley gruel bubbling over an open flame, and your stomach growls in protest. You push on. The sun climbs higher, but it brings little warmth. Your feet are soaked, your fingers are stiff, and you're starting to wish for just one modern comfort, a pair of dry socks maybe, or a hot cup of coffee. But there's none of that here. Just you, the cold, and the long day stretching out ahead. You pass another neighbor, an old man hunched over a staff. He looks at you with rheumy eyes and nods. You nod back, the simple exchange enough to remind you that you're not alone in this frozen morning. There's comfort in that at least. You keep moving, each step a quiet act of defiance against the cold. Your breath comes in slow clouds, your hands buried deep in your sleeves. The village stretches out before you, a patchwork of thatch and smoke, mud and frost. And you, wrapped in your scratchy wool, are part of it all, cold, hungry, but still moving. You head back into your hut, the damp air clinging to your skin as you settle by the fire for a moment of rest. The hearth crackles softly, but it's not enough to chase the chill from your bones. You pull a piece of bread from your pouch, stale, hard as a rock, but you gnaw at it anyway. It's fuel for the day ahead. Your stomach growls in protest. You remember the hot breakfasts you used to enjoy, warm porridge, scrambled eggs, even just a slice of toast. Here, the closest you get to that is a chunk of cheese if you're lucky, or maybe a thin soup simmered from last night's bones. Today, it's just bread and small beer again. Historians still argue whether medieval people genuinely preferred small beer over water because of safety, or because it gave a slight buzz to start the day. Either way, you gulp it down, the weak tang of malt and yeast barely enough to wash down the bread. You wipe your mouth on your sleeve and glance around the hut. There's a pot hanging from a hook over the fire, a copper cauldron, battered and blackened by years of use. It's empty for now, but you know it'll hold the day's meal later on. You're already thinking about what that might be. Barley gruel, maybe, or a bit of cabbage if there's any left. There's a scratching sound near the corner of the hut. You turn your head and catch a flash of movement. A rat, bold as you please, sniffing at the scraps by the wall. You shoo it away with a flick of your hand, but you know it'll be back. Rats are as much a part of medieval life as mud and cold, and let's be honest, that's probably the closest thing to a protein source you'll see today. The wind rattles the door, and you pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders. It's thin, the wool worn through at the elbows, but it's all you've got. You stand and stretch, feeling the stiffness in your joints. Your back protests, your knees ache, but you push it all aside. There's no time for complaints here. You step outside, and the day has brightened a little. The sun's rays filter through the clouds, turning the frost to water that drips from the eaves in slow, steady drops. The village is alive with activity, voices raised in greeting, the clatter of wooden pails, the sharp ring of a blacksmith's hammer. You head towards the market square, the center of village life. It's not much. A few stalls covered with rough cloth, baskets heaped with turnips and onions, a couple of chickens squawking in cages. But it's the beating heart of the village, a place where you can trade news and gossip as easily as you can trade goods. A woman stands behind a stall, her hands red and chapped from the cold. She's selling yesterday's bread, cut into hunks and stacked in a basket. You catch her eye, and she gives you a small, tight smile. There's no warmth in it, but there's no malice either. Just the tired camaraderie of people who know winter too well. You hand over a couple of coppers for a fresh hunk of bread. It's soft, at least by medieval standards, and you tuck it into your pouch like a treasure. You nod your thanks and move on, weaving through the small crowd. There's a man selling herbs and dried flowers, lavender, rosemary, and something that smells like sweet wood. He claims it'll keep away the sickness, but you're skeptical. Still, you linger, breathing in the fragrance and letting it transport you, if only for a moment, away from the muddy streets. You overhear a conversation between two men. They're talking about the weather, how it's turned colder than it should be this time of year. One of them spits into the mud, muttering about how it's a sign of bad omens. The other just shrugs, pulling his cloak tighter. Mainstream historians agree that weather patterns in medieval Europe were unpredictable. Harsh winters, sudden storms, and the Little Ice Age all conspired to make survival even harder. And yet, life went on. People adapted, or at least they tried to. You slip past a stall selling salted fish, silver-scaled and stiff, their eyes dull and glassy. You're tempted to buy one, but your coppers are already stretched thin. Maybe next week if you're lucky. A woman calls out a greeting, her voice warm despite the chill. She's selling wool yarn, spun and dyed in rich, earthy colors. You pause to touch a skein, feeling the coarse fibers between your fingers. It's scratchy, but strong. A luxury you can't afford today, but you tuck the memory of it away, something soft and bright in a world of gray. As you turn to leave, you hear a snatch of song, someone singing a ballad about a brave knight and a lady fair. It's a tale you've heard 100 times, but it still makes you smile. You hum along as you walk, the tune a small comfort in the cold. You head back home, bread in your pouch and the cold in your bones. The market square fades behind you, replaced by the steady rhythm of your feet in the mud, the quiet murmur of your breath in the cold air. And as you walk, you can't help but think, this is your life now. Cold mornings, scratchy clothes, stale bread, and yet, somehow, still moving forward. You trudge back along the muddy path, your breath a thin mist that rises and vanishes in the morning air. The cold has settled in your bones, but there's no time to dwell on it. There's always more work to do. The well is already a memory. Now it's time for the other tasks that fill your day. You pass by a group of villagers gathered around a cart stuck in the mud. They're pulling and pushing, grunting with effort as the wooden wheels sink deeper with every shove. You join in without a word, your shoulder pressed against the rough wood. It's a communal thing. No one stands by when there's work to be done. The cart lurches forward with a groan, the mud sucking at it like a living thing. You wipe your hands on your tunic, the wool already stained darker from the damp. One of the men claps you on the back, a quick, silent thanks, and you move on, your breath coming faster now from the strain. Your next stop is the woodpile behind the hut. The winter cold means you'll need a constant supply of firewood. You pick up the axe, the handle smooth from years of use, and start chopping. Each swing sends a shock through your arms, the wood splitting with a satisfying crack. Chips fly into the air, the scent of fresh sap, a fleeting comfort. Historians still argue whether medieval folk saw woodcutting as a chore or a moment of quiet reflection. For you, it's both. Your mind wanders as your arms work, each swing a rhythm in the day. You think of your mother's stories about the old forest spirits, about how you should thank the trees for their gift of warmth. You're not sure if you believe it, but you pause anyway, just for a moment, to lay a hand on the stump and murmur a quiet thanks. Your breath clouds the air, your fingers numb despite the work. You stack the split logs carefully, knowing each one is precious. A warm fire is the difference between life and frostbite, between comfort and a night spent shivering in the dark. You carry an armload of wood into the hut, the door creaking on its leather hinges. Inside, the hearth glows softly, the smoke curling up into the dark. You feed the fire, watching the flames catch and dance, feeling the brief kiss of heat on your face. It's a small victory in a day of endless chores. Your stomach growls again, and you remember the bread in your pouch. You tear off a piece and chew slowly, savoring the small comfort. It's rough and dry, but it fills the emptiness. You wash it down with another gulp of small beer, the weak fizz of it, a poor substitute for real ale, but better than water that might carry sickness. You glance around the hut, taking in the small signs of life. Bundles of herbs hanging from the rafters, a wooden spoon resting by the hearth, a rough woven blanket folded neatly in the corner. It's not much, but it's home. For now, that's enough. Outside, the village hums with quiet industry. A woman draws water from the well, her breath steaming in the cold. A man mends a fence, the hammers tap, 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 blending with the distant clang of the blacksmith. Children chase each other, their laughter bright and fleeting in the cold air. You step back outside, the world brighter now as the sun climbs higher. The frost has begun to melt, turning the ground to slick, sticky mud. You pick your way carefully, your feet slipping with every step. You pause to watch a chicken pecking at the ground, its feathers fluffed up against the chill. It seems unbothered by the cold, and for a moment, you envy its simple life. You spot a neighbor hauling a bucket of slops to the pigs. The smell is enough to turn your stomach, but you nod a greeting anyway. She nods back, her face half hidden by the scarf wrapped around her head. There's a quiet understanding in that brief exchange. Life here is hard, but you're all in it together. Mainstream historians agree that community was everything in medieval villages. Isolation meant danger. Cooperation meant survival. You see it in every shared task, every nod of greeting, every bundle of sticks offered without a word. You head to the forest's edge, the trees dark and looming. You've been told to gather kindling, small branches, dry twigs that can catch a spark. The forest is quiet. The only sounds the rustle of leaves and the occasional bird call. You work quickly, your hands red from the cold, the twigs snapping as you break them to size. There's a hush in the forest, a sense of something ancient and watchful. You pause for a moment, feeling the weight of it. Historians still debate whether medieval folk truly believed in forest spirits, or if it was just a way to explain the mysteries of the wild. You're not sure, but you find yourself whispering a quiet apology as you take what you need. You head back to the village, your arms full of kindling, your breath coming in slow clouds. The sun is higher now, the day bright but still cold. You slip a little on the muddy path, but you catch yourself, your heart pounding with the sudden jolt. You laugh softly at your own clumsiness, a small moment of humor in a world that rarely makes room for laughter. As you step back into the village, you feel the quiet satisfaction of a task well done. Your back aches, your fingers are stiff, but you've gathered what you need. The day is still young, and there's more work to do. But for now, you've done enough. The sun is high now, the light pale and watery as it filters through the gray sky. You head back to the village square, where the market has grown busier since the morning. People gather around the rough wooden stalls, haggling over onions and turnips, fresh eggs, and the odd hunk of smoked fish. You weave through the crowd, the smell of wet wool and wood smoke wrapping around you like a second skin. Your stomach growls again as you pass a woman selling barley cakes, the sweet, earthy smell a small comfort. You can't afford one today, your coppers are already spoken for, but you watch the steam rise from the cakes and let the warmth of the thought fill you for a moment. A man in a rough cloak is selling small bundles of herbs, sage, thyme, and a twist of something that smells sharp and green. He calls out to the crowd, claiming his herbs will cure everything from coughs to curses. Historians still argue whether medieval folk truly believed in these cures, or if it was just the best hope they had in a world with few other answers. You pause by his stall, fingers itching to reach out and feel the softness of the leaves. You remember your grandmother's stories, how she'd tie bundles of herbs above the door to keep the spirits away, how she'd brew bitter teas to chase the cold from your bones. Whether they worked or not, they were a comfort. A child tugs at your sleeve, his eyes wide with curiosity. He holds out a wooden carving, a rough little horse on wheels. His father stands behind him, offering a tired smile. You hand over a couple of coppers for the toy. It's simple, but something to remind you of the small joys in this world. You tuck the toy into your pouch and move on. The weight of it, a quiet reminder of your humanity. Even in a world that's cold and hard, there's room for small kindnesses. You pass by a group of men arguing over the price of a sheepskin cloak. One of them insists it's worth twice what's being offered, while the other shakes his head and points out the holes worn through at the elbows. Their voices rise and fall, a sharp counterpoint to the softer sounds of the market. You slip away, not wanting to get caught in the middle. There's nothing you can do to settle that argument, and besides, you've got your own chores waiting. You head back towards your hut, the toy horse bouncing gently against your hip with each step. Mainstream historians agree that markets like this were the lifeblood of medieval villages, a place to trade goods, share news, and catch up on gossip. You hear snatches of conversation as you walk, talk of a traveling peddler selling trinkets from the Holy Land, rumors of a sickness in the next village over. You tuck the news away, another small thread in the fabric of your day. You pass a woman selling pottery, rough clay jugs and bowls, their surfaces etched with simple patterns. She offers you a shy smile, and you nod back, admiring the quiet beauty of her work. Each piece is a testament to the hands that shaped it, the patient turning of the wheel, the slow dance of earth and water. You pause to watch her work for a moment, the way her fingers coax the clay into shape, the quiet focus in her eyes. It's a small act of creation in a world that can seem so full of destruction. You take a breath and move on, your heart a little lighter for having seen it. You duck into an alleyway, the stones slick under your feet. It's quieter here, the noise of the market muffled by the close walls. You lean against the rough wood of a door, letting yourself rest for a moment. Your breath slows, your shoulders relax. You close your eyes and just listen to the distant clatter of pots, the low murmur of voices, the quiet sigh of the wind. You open your eyes and push away from the door. There's still more to do, always more to do. You head back towards the well, your mind already on the next task. Water to haul, firewood to stack, maybe a few small repairs to the roof before the next rain comes. As you walk, you pass a man leading a donkey laden with sacks of grain. The donkey's ears flick back and forth, the sacks swaying with each step. The man catches your eye and nods, his face half hidden by a hood. You nod back, a small moment of shared understanding in the cold. You turn the corner and see the church tower rising above the huts, its stones dark and cold against the sky. The bells will ring soon, calling everyone to prayer, or simply marking another hour past. You feel the weight of those bells in your chest, a reminder of the slow, steady march of time in this world. You head back to your hut, your feet tired, your stomach empty. You've traded, you've listened, you've seen the quiet rhythm of the market. Now, it's time to rest for a moment, to gather your strength before the next task begins. You duck inside, the familiar smell of smoke and wool wrapping around you like an old cloak. You take a breath and close your eyes, just for a moment. The toy horse is warm against your hip, the memory of the market still humming in your bones. And you remind yourself, in this world, every small kindness matters. Every quiet moment of rest is a victory. You're back inside your hut now, letting your eyes adjust to the dim light and the flicker of the hearth. The fire's low, but it's a comfort nonetheless, a soft glow in the cold gloom. You sit down on the stool, your muscles aching from the morning's work, and let your shoulders slump for a moment. But there's no time to rest for long. The bells in the church tower begin to toll, each peal slow and heavy in the winter air. You feel them in your chest, deep and resonant, a summons you can't ignore. You rise, tucking your small bundle of kindling closer to the hearth, and step outside once more. The cold hits you like a slap, the wind carrying a bite that goes straight to your bones. You pull your cloak tighter, your breath coming in soft clouds as you walk towards the church. The bells keep ringing, a slow, patient call that draws the village together. The church itself is a small stone building, its roof steep and dark against the pale sky. The wooden door creaks as you push it open, the smell of cold stone and old incense washing over you. Inside, it's quiet. So quiet you can hear the shuffling of feet on the flagstone floor, the soft rustle of woolen cloaks. You slip into a pew near the back, the wood worn smooth by generations of hands. The air is cold and still, the only warmth coming from the thin shafts of light that fall through the narrow windows. You bow your head, though your mind drifts as the priest's voice rises and falls, a familiar rhythm that's both comfort and obligation. Mainstream historians agree that medieval people were deeply tied to the church. Its rituals shaped the rhythm of their days, its teachings woven into the very fabric of their lives. And yet, there were always quiet questions, murmurs that slipped through the cracks of faith. Historians still debate how much of that faith was heartfelt and how much was born of fear, of sin, of judgment, of the unknown. You glance up at the flickering candles, the wax dripping slow tears down their sides. The priest drones on in Latin, the words a music you don't understand but know by heart anyway. Around you, others shift and sigh, their faces a study in quiet endurance. You wonder if they're praying, or if their minds, like yours, are already back at the hearth, back at the market, back at the small tasks that wait for them beyond these cold stone walls. You catch a snatch of gossip whispered behind a cupped hand, something about a neighbor's daughter and a traveling merchant, the hint of scandal enough to brighten even the darkest winter day. You smile to yourself, the quiet humor of it, a small warmth in the chill air. The priest finishes, his voice dropping to a final, solemn note. You stand with the others, your breath a cloud in the cold air, and shuffle towards the door. Outside, the bells ring again, brighter now in the sharp winter light. You step back into the day, blinking against the sudden brightness. The cold seems sharper after the stillness of the church, the wind cutting through the layers of wool and linen you wear. You pull your cloak tighter, your hands tucked deep in your sleeves, and head back down the muddy path towards the village square. The market is quieter now, the morning's bustle replaced by a more subdued hum. A few people linger, finishing their trades or sharing a quiet word. You pass by a man with a wooden box of charms and trinkets, bits of bone, polished stones, and small iron amulets. He claims they'll keep away evil spirits, though you're not sure you believe it. Still, there's something comforting in the thought of a small protection, a charm to hold the darkness at bay. You keep moving, your eyes on the path ahead. The wind picks up, carrying with it the scent of smoke and distant cooking fires. You pause to watch a child chase a chicken across the square, her laughter bright and wild in the cold air. It's a small, bright moment in a day that feels carved from gray stone. You think of the saints and the prayers, the weight of the church's teachings pressing on your shoulders. But you also think of the warmth of your hearth, the rough bread in your pouch, the way the morning's cold has already begun to seep from your bones. In this world, faith is a comfort, but so is the crackle of the fire, the weight of a good cloak, the laughter of children in the square. As you walk back towards your hut, you pause to watch the sun slide behind a cloud, turning the world to soft shadow. You take a breath and let it out slow, feeling the cold air fill your lungs. Around you, the village moves in its quiet rhythm, chores, prayers, small kindnesses, and smaller joys. You're part of it, wrapped in the same cold wind, the same quiet struggle. You duck back into your hut, the door closing with a soft thud behind you. The fire has burned low, but it still glows, a small promise of warmth in the cold day. You settle on your stool again, your back to the door, and let the quiet of the hut wrap around you like a blanket. Outside, the church bells fade into memory, their echo lingering in the stillness. You close your eyes and rest for a moment, the warmth of the hearth on your face, the slow beat of your heart steady in your chest. You're jolted from your rest by a sharp knock at the door, a low thump, urgent but not unfriendly. You open it to find a neighbor standing there, her cheeks red from the cold, a basket balanced on her hip. She nods at you, her eyes bright despite the winter's grip. She's here to swap news, maybe trade a bit of gossip or a scrap of cloth for mending. In medieval times, Even the smallest of exchanges were woven into the fabric of survival. Mainstream historians agree it was the lifeblood of village life, each small kindness a thread holding the whole together. You invite her in, and she steps into the warmth of your hut with a sigh of relief. She sets the basket on the floor. Inside, you catch a glimpse of onions and a scrap of salted pork, a luxury in these lean times. She's willing to trade for a bit of firewood, maybe even a story or two if the mood strikes. You settle down on the stool, the two of you close enough to feel the small warmth of the hearth between you. She talks as she works, pulling a bundle of wool from her basket and carding it with quick, practiced hands. The rhythm of it is soothing, the soft whisper of wool on wool, a quiet counterpoint to the crackle of the fire. She tells you about a traveling peddler who's set up shop at the edge of the village, a man with bright ribbons and tiny glass beads that catch the light like captured rain. She says he's got stories, too, tales of distant lands and cities that rise from the sea. You listen, your mind wandering to the bright colors and far-off places you'll likely never see. Historians still argue whether these traveling peddlers were truly as exotic as they claimed, or if they were just the same as you, moving from village to village with whatever wares they could carry. Either way, they brought a hint of the wider world to your doorstep, a reminder that there was more beyond the muddy streets of your village. The two of you share a laugh when she mimics the peddler's grand gestures, his promises of the finest goods in all Christendom, ringing hollow in the cold. It's a small moment of humor, a bright spark in the gray day. You find yourself smiling more than you have all morning. You trade her a bundle of kindling for a handful of onions, their sharp scent a promise of flavor in the night's meal. She thanks you with a quiet nod, tucking the kindling under her arm as she stands to leave. Before she goes, she pauses, glancing around the hut with a faint smile. "You keep it warm enough," she says, and you hear the faint note of envy in her voice. You watch her go, her footsteps soft in the mud outside. You close the door again, the hut suddenly quieter in her absence. The onions sit on the table, their papery skins crackling in the firelight. You take a moment to breathe it in, the small, good scent of them, the promise of something more than just bread tonight. You set about your next task, tending the fire, checking the thatch for leaks, making sure the little hut is as snug as it can be. You move slowly, your body tired, but your mind humming with the quiet satisfaction of a morning well spent. Outside, the wind has calmed a little, the clouds thinning to let in a sliver of pale sun. You think of the peddler, his bright ribbons and silver tongue. Maybe you'll go see him tomorrow, if there's time. Maybe you'll find a scrap of bright cloth to tuck into your belt, a small piece of color to carry with you through the winter. For now, though, you sit by the hearth, your hands wrapped around a clay mug of warm beer. The taste is faintly sour, but it's enough. You watch the fire dance, the flicker of light and shadow on the rough walls, and let your mind wander. You think of the small things that make this life bearable, the warmth of the fire, the quiet talk of a friend, the promise of a hot meal at the end of the day. These are the things that keep you moving, even when the cold seems endless. You catch a whiff of the onions, sharp and earthy, and you smile. You've got what you need to make a simple stew tonight, and that's enough for now. Outside, the sun edges a little higher, turning the frost on the thatch to a slow, glistening drip. The day is moving forward, and so are you. You lean back in your stool, the fire warm on your face, and close your eyes for a moment. The world outside is cold and gray, but in here, there's light and warmth. And in this small, simple life, that's worth more than any bright ribbon or glass bead. The day wears on, and with it, the slow march of time that seems to stretch each hour into something almost endless. You stand, stretching out the stiffness in your back, and step out of the hut again, drawn by the distant sound of metal striking metal. You follow the clang of iron to the edge of the village, where the blacksmith's forge stands like a bright heart in the cold day. The smith is a broad-shouldered man, his face smeared with soot, his hammer rising and falling in a steady rhythm. Sparks fly as he works, each flash of light a brief starburst in the gray morning. You stand for a moment, just watching. There's a kind of quiet magic in the way he shapes the iron, the slow dance of heat and muscle and will. Historians agree that blacksmiths held a special place in medieval life, part craftsman, part magician, their skill as vital as bread or water. You step closer, the heat of the forge a welcome relief against the cold. The blacksmith pauses, wiping sweat from his brow with a soot-streaked arm. He glances at you and nods, the briefest of greetings, before turning back to his work. You see the faint smile at the corner of his mouth. He knows you're here for the spectacle as much as the warmth. The smell of hot iron and singed hair fills the air, sharp and almost sweet. You watch as he shapes a horseshoe, the metal glowing bright and molten under his hammer. He works with the easy confidence of someone who's done this 1,000 times, each swing measured and sure. There's a kind of rhythm to it, a heartbeat of iron and sweat that pulls you in. You feel the warmth of the forge on your face, the crackle of the coals loud in your ears. For a moment, you almost forget the cold that's been your constant companion since dawn. A small crowd is gathered, children wide-eyed with wonder, old men nodding in quiet approval. The blacksmith barely seems to notice, his focus absolute. He dips the horseshoe into a barrel of water, and steam billows up in a hiss, carrying the tang of iron and water. You think of your own small tasks, hauling water, chopping wood, and how they seem to pale in comparison to the blacksmith's craft. But then you remember that everything has its place here, every task part of the slow dance of survival. Historians still argue whether medieval people saw these daily tasks as drudgery or as an unspoken rhythm that gave meaning to their lives. You're starting to think it's a bit of both. You watch a boy inch closer to the forge, his eyes wide with awe. The blacksmith notices and winks, then carefully shows him a small horseshoe, its edges still warm and dark. The boy grins, and the crowd chuckles softly, a small moment of warmth in the cold. You leave the forge with a smile, the heat still lingering on your skin. The village seems brighter for a moment, the small kindnesses and quiet craft of the morning lingering like the glow of the coals. You walk back to the market square, where the last of the morning's trade is winding down. A traveling merchant has set up a small table, his wares laid out on a threadbare cloth. Bright ribbons, small pots of ointment, a handful of coins that catch the light like tiny moons. You pause, letting your eyes wander over the bright colors and odd trinkets. The merchant greets you with a grin, his voice smooth and practiced. He offers you a ribbon, a deep blue, the color of the sky at midnight. He says it's good luck, though he'd probably say the same of anything he sells. You weigh the ribbon in your hand, feeling the soft weave of the cloth, the small luxury of it. It's more than you can spare, but for a moment, you let yourself imagine it. Tied around your wrist, a small piece of beauty in a world that often feels so gray. You hand it back with a smile, and the merchant doesn't seem offended. He just winks, already turning to the next curious customer. You walk on, the bright color lingering in your mind like a song you can't quite forget. The day is brightening now, the sun climbing higher, though the warmth is still a distant promise. You make your way back to your hut, your stomach growling at the thought of the onion stew you'll make tonight. It's not much, but it's enough. A small comfort at the end of a long day. As you step inside, you take a moment to breathe in the quiet. The fire is low but steady, the smell of wood smoke soft and comforting. You close the door behind you, the cold shut out for a little while. You set to work, chopping the onions and adding them to the pot, the sharp scent filling the hut. You hum a tune under your breath, a song you heard at the market maybe, or just something your grandmother used to sing. The stew bubbles slowly, each breath of steam a promise of warmth and fullness. You think of the blacksmith, the boy with the bright eyes, the merchant's ribbon. Small moments, bright threads in the tapestry of a medieval day. You take a deep breath and smile. In this cold, muddy world, those bright threads are enough to keep you going. The stew bubbles quietly, the scent of onions and broth a small comfort in the cold air of the hut. You stir it slowly, watching the soft swirl of steam as it rises. Your stomach growls at the smell, but you're patient. Good things take time, even in a world that rarely seems to offer them. You sit back for a moment, letting the heat of the hearth warm your face. Outside, the cold wind rattles the shutters, but inside, there's a soft hush, a quiet that feels almost sacred. You let yourself lean into it, your eyes half closed, your mind drifting on the slow rhythm of the day. The door creaks open, and a neighbor slips in, her face red from the wind. She's brought a small loaf of bread to trade for a bit of your stew, her eyes bright with the promise of something hot and filling. You nod, and she settles across from you, her hands wrapped around the small clay cup you offer. You ladle out the stew, the onions soft and sweet now, the broth rich with what little fat you had to spare. She sighs as she takes her first sip, and for a moment, the two of you just sit in silence, sharing the simple comfort of a warm meal on a cold day. You talk as you eat, your voices low and easy. She tells you of a new calf born to the neighbor's cow, of a man seen limping home from the woods with a load of firewood and a cut on his cheek. Historians still argue whether medieval villages were close-knit out of necessity or true affection. But in these small moments, you're sure it's both. You share what you've heard too, rumors of a traveling minstrel who might stop by the village soon, or the tale of the merchant who claims to have seen the sea, though you suspect he's never been further than the next town over. The stories weave between you like threads of bright wool, a tapestry of small truths and small lies that makes the world feel just a little bit wider. The stew is gone too soon, the last spoonful scraped from the pot and the bread reduced to a few crumbs. Your neighbor wipes her mouth on her sleeve and thanks you with a quiet smile. She leaves you with a scrap of wool in trade, rough but dyed a soft green that's rare in this drab world. You tuck it away carefully, a small luxury to hold on to. You stand and stretch, your back popping softly. The fire needs tending, so you add a few more sticks to the hearth, watching the flames catch and climb. Outside, the wind has died down a bit, the gray clouds thinning to show a hint of pale blue sky. You take a moment to step outside, breathing in the sharp, clean air. The village is quieter now, The morning's bustle settled into the slow rhythm of afternoon. A few children chase each other near the well, their laughter a bright note in the cold air. A dog sleeps in the sun, his nose tucked under his tail, a small circle of warmth in the chill. You pass by a neighbor mending a fence, his hands red and rough as he ties the wooden slats together with strips of willow. He glances up and nods, and you nod back, the quiet bond of shared labor and shared cold. Historians still argue whether medieval people really thought of themselves as part of a community or if it was just survival. But you see the truth in every nod and every shared chore. You help for a while, your fingers clumsy at first but soon finding the rhythm of the work. The willow strips creak as you pull them tight, the wood bending to your will. The fence stands a little taller when you're done, and you share a brief grin with your neighbor, another small victory in a world that doesn't offer many. You head back to your hut as the sun begins to dip, the light turning the muddy streets to liquid gold. You pause at the door, taking in the quiet of the village, the soft murmur of voices, the faint clatter of a pot on a hearth, the wind sighing in the eaves. It's a small world, but for now, it's enough. Inside, the fire is low, the warmth of the stew lingering in the air. You sit by the hearth, the green wool scrap in your lap, and let your mind wander. You think of the day, of the blacksmith's forge, the bright ribbons in the market, the quiet talk of neighbors sharing what little they have. You think of how each small kindness is a light in the cold, each shared story a thread that ties you to this place. You close your eyes and breathe deep, the smoke and wool and onions still in your senses. Outside, the sun slips lower, the sky streaked with soft pink and gold, and for a moment, you let yourself just be here, warm, fed, and part of something older and quieter than you can name. The sun slips lower, turning the world to shadow and soft glow. You stir from your seat by the hearth, the green scrap of wool a comfort in your lap. It's time to see to the animals. Another task that waits for no one, no matter how long or hard the day has been. You step outside, the air sharp and crisp against your face. The village is bathed in the last light of day, the thatched roofs dusted with frost that catches the pink glow of sunset. The chickens are already roosting, their soft clucks a sleepy melody in the fading light. You pause to watch them, their feathers fluffed against the cold. You move to the goat pen next, your breath a white cloud in the still air. The goats bleat softly, noses bumping against your hands in search of scraps. You rub their heads, your fingers warming with the soft, coarse hair. One of them nibbles at the hem of your tunic, and you laugh softly, the sound startling in the quiet evening. Historians agree that medieval folk relied heavily on their animals, goats, chickens, pigs. They were more than food. They were warmth, milk, eggs, small promises of survival in a world that offered few guarantees. You check the pen's fence for holes, your fingers tracing the rough wood. Satisfied, you slip back towards the hut. You pass by a neighbor tending a small fire outside his door, the flicker of flame turning his face to a study in light and shadow. He's turning a spit over the embers, some small bird or rabbit, the smell of roasted meat a pang in your own empty belly. He looks up and nods, and you nod back, a silent acknowledgement of shared labor and shared hunger. You slip back inside your hut, the fire still crackling low. You feed it another stick of wood, the flame brightening, and settle down once more. The green scrap of wool waits in your lap, soft and comforting under your fingers. You wrap it around your wrist for a moment, a small bit of color against the rough brown of your sleeve. Outside, the wind has quieted, the village hushed in the slow, patient breath of evening. You close your eyes and let the rhythm of it fill you, the crackle of the fire, the soft creak of the door in the wind, the distant murmur of voices as neighbors share the last stories of the day. You think of those stories, the ones you've heard today, and the ones that linger like old songs in your memory. There was talk of a feast day coming soon, though no one has much to offer. Talk of a traveling knight who passed through weeks ago, his horse shod in bright steel that rang like music on the frozen ground. Even rumors of a distant war, though that seems as far away as the sun itself. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants truly feared the distant battles of kings, or whether they were too busy fighting their own small wars against hunger, cold, and the grind of daily life. As you sit there, your hands warmed by the fire, you know which battle matters most to you. You stand and move to the small chest by the door. Inside are your few treasures: a wooden spoon worn smooth by years of stirring, a scrap of embroidered cloth you found at market years ago, and a small wooden icon of a saint, his face worn to a soft blur by countless touches. You run your fingers over the carved wood, the feel of it grounding you in the hush of the evening. You tuck the saint back in the chest and close it with a soft thud. Outside, the last light fades, the sky turning a deep, soft blue. You feel the weight of the day in your bones, the ache in your back, the slow pull of sleep at your eyes. But there's a quiet satisfaction, too, a sense of a day well lived, even if nothing in it was easy. You settle by the fire again, the green wool still wrapped around your wrist, and let your mind wander. You think of the fields waiting for spring, the stories of merchants and minstrels that ripple through the village like threads of gold. You think of the soft promise of tomorrow, a chance to rise again, to gather wood and water, to share another meal with a friend. The fire crackles softly, the small hut warm and safe against the chill night. Outside, the moon is rising, its pale light silvering the thatch and the muddy paths. You close your eyes for a moment and let the quiet of the night settle around you like a cloak. And in that hush, in that soft glow of firelight and moonlight, you feel it, the simple, stubborn beauty of a life built from small kindnesses and small comforts. A life that may be cold and muddy, but is still yours, still moving forward, one breath at a time. The night deepens, the fire a warm glow against the chill that presses at the door. You lean back in your stool, feeling the weight of the day settle into your bones. Outside, the village is wrapped in shadow, the only sounds the occasional bark of a dog or the distant muffled echo of laughter from the alehouse. You think about that laughter, about the way the alehouse seems to gather the heart of the village after dark. It's not much, just a low-ceilinged room with rough benches and a barrel or two of ale, but it's a place where warmth and cheer are measured in shared stories and the clink of wooden mugs. You stand and stretch, your back protesting the movement, and decide to see it for yourself. You pull your cloak around your shoulders and step outside, the cold night air biting at your cheeks. The path to the alehouse is slick with frost, the moonlight turning the muddy ruts to pale silver. Inside, the air is warm and thick with the smell of yeast and smoke. Voices rise and fall in soft waves, the low murmur of neighbors sharing the small joys and smaller sorrows of the day. A woman sits by the fire, her fingers moving in quick, clever stitches as she mends a tear in her sleeve. A man leans back on a bench, his laughter deep and easy as he tells a tale about a fox that outsmarted the village hounds. You find a spot near the hearth, the heat a sweet relief against the cold. Someone hands you a wooden mug of ale, thin and bitter, but warm. You raise it in a silent toast and take a slow sip, the taste sharp on your tongue. Historians still argue about how central the alehouse was to medieval life. Some say it was a place of sin and vice, where men squandered what little they had. Others argue it was a rare bright spot, a place where stories wove together and laughter rose above the cold and the mud. Sitting here, you can see both sides. There's a rowdy energy in the air, but also a quiet comfort in the way people lean in close, the way stories tumble out like coins on a wooden counter. You catch snatches of gossip, a farmer's daughter who's been promised to the miller's son, a merchant who swears he's seen a sea monster off the coast of Normandy. The words swirl around you, each one a small window into another life. A boy slips through the crowd, his eyes bright with curiosity. He's too young for the ale, but he's here for the stories, his head cocked to catch every word. The man telling the fox story sees him and winks, drawing out the tale a little longer, weaving in a sly grin and a clever twist that has the boy's mouth hanging open. You find yourself laughing too, the sound of it bright in your chest. It's a small, warm thing, but it feels good, like stretching out sore muscles after a long day. You lean back and watch the firelight flicker on the faces around you, the soft glow turning every line and wrinkle into a map of long days and quiet triumphs. Mainstream historians agree that these small moments, these snatches of song, these shared mugs of ale, were the glue that held villages together. In a world of cold nights and endless labor, they were proof that life was more than just survival. The woman with the sewing sets her needle down and begins a song, her voice low and steady. Others join in, the tune simple and old as the stones of the church tower. It's a song about the harvest, about the promise of spring, and the hope that grows even in the coldest earth. You close your eyes and let the music wash over you. It's not perfect. Some voices wander off key, some words are lost in the soft chatter, but it's enough. In this small room, with the fire crackling and the air thick with the scent of bread and beer, you feel the weight of the day lift, just a little. You know you'll have to go back to your hut soon, back to the small fire and the quiet of your own four walls. But for now, you're here, warm, fed, and part of something bigger than yourself. You sip your ale and smile at the boy still perched on the edge of the bench, his eyes wide with wonder. You watch the flames dance in the hearth, the light flickering across the rough wooden beams overhead. Outside, the cold night waits, but inside, there is warmth, laughter, and the soft echo of a song older than any of you. You take a deep breath and let it out slow, feeling the simple truth of it settle in your bones. In this world of mud and frost, there are still bright moments, still small sanctuaries where stories are told and songs are sung, and for a little while, the cold can't touch you. You slip out of the alehouse at last, the warmth and laughter still clinging to your skin like the glow of the fire. Outside, the cold hits you fresh and sharp, a bracing jolt that wakes you from the drowsy comfort of the evening. Your breath clouds the air, and you pull your cloak tight around your shoulders as you step back onto the moonlit path. The village is quieter now, the muddy lanes silvered in the pale light of the moon. Here and there, a faint glow leaks from behind shutters, hearth fires banked low for the night, their light a soft promise against the dark. You make your way carefully, each footstep a soft crunch in the frost that's begun to creep across the ground. Your stomach is full, your heart light from the shared laughter and song. But there's another sort of warmth in the air tonight, one that has little to do with firelight and everything to do with stolen glances and quiet promises. You see them as you walk, a couple leaning close in the shadows by a hut, their laughter low and soft. A boy and girl sitting on a step, their fingers twined together like roots in the earth. Love and marriage in medieval times weren't always matters of the heart. Often they were contracts and bargains, alliances struck in the name of land and survival. But in the hush of night, those rules seem to loosen, just a little. Historians still debate whether love had much say in these matters, or whether it was merely a bright thread woven through the darker tapestry of need and duty. But watching the shy smile of the girl in the shadows, you think maybe, just maybe, there was room for both. You turn the corner and find yourself at the edge of the village, the fields stretching out beyond in a dark, rolling sea of shadow. You pause, breathing in the cold, crisp air, the scent of wood smoke and damp earth grounding you in this moment. You remember stories your grandmother used to tell, tales of young lovers meeting in secret, their whispers stolen from the dark. She'd speak of how they'd braid flowers into each other's hair in springtime, how they'd dance by moonlight in the meadows when no one was watching. You smile at the memory, the way those stories felt like a promise of something tender and bright, even in the hardest seasons. You see a woman at her door, her hair loose and dark against her pale shift. She looks up as you pass, her eyes catching the moonlight, and for a moment the world feels hushed around you, like the air itself is holding its breath. She gives you a small smile, and you return it, the warmth of that brief connection a flicker in the cold. You walk on, the hush of the village wrapping around you like a soft cloak. A dog howls somewhere far off, the sound long and low, and you think of the wolves that still haunt the edges of the forest, old spirits of the wild, just beyond the reach of your small firelit world. Back at your hut, you pause at the door, your hand resting on the rough wood. You take one last look at the moonlit village, the soft glow of the hearths, the quiet hum of a world that keeps moving forward, one breath at a time. Then you slip inside, the door closing behind you with a soft click. The fire is low, but it still glows, the coals a soft, living red. You settle back on your stool, the green wool scrap still tied around your wrist, and let the quiet of the night settle around you. Your mind drifts, tracing the shape of the girl's smile in the shadows, the warm press of bodies in the alehouse, the small, bright flickers of connection that make even the coldest night a little warmer. You think of how those small moments of tenderness, those glances, those soft words, are as much a part of this life as the chores and the cold. They're not enough to feed a belly or warm a bed, but they're enough to keep hope alive through the long nights. You close your eyes and breathe deep. The the hush of the hut wrapping around you like a lullaby. Outside, the moon still watches, and somewhere in the darkness, a boy and a girl share a laugh that feels like a promise. You let that sound carry you into sleep, a small light in the cold. The hush of the night holds you close, but sleep doesn't come easily in a world like this. You shift on your stool, the fire's glow flickering in your half-closed eyes. There's a cough in your chest, a scratchy echo of the cold and damp that clings to the village like a second skin. You pull your cloak tighter and think of how illness is a constant companion here. Even a simple cough can bloom into something dangerous when the air itself seems to sap your strength. You've seen it happen. Neighbors wrapped in blankets, their breath ragged, the priest murmuring prayers while a neighbor mixes onion poultices and whispers old cures. Mainstream historians agree that medieval folk lived with sickness the way you live with the weather. Unpredictable, often cruel, but always there. But there are those other, smaller tales, the fringed tidbits that slip through the cracks of dusty chronicles, like how some swore by garlic amulets, or sleeping with a small wooden cross under the pillow to keep the cough at bay. You cough again, the sound rough in the quiet, and wonder if you should have kept that clove of garlic your grandmother once tied to your wrist. You smile wryly at the thought, old magic in a world of cold stone and cracked thatch. You stand and move to the small chest near the door, rummaging for the tiny bag of dried herbs you traded for at the market last spring. Sage, thyme, and a pinch of something sharp and bitter. You toss a handful into the pot of water on the hearth, the scent rising, green and clean, a promise of something soothing. You sip the brew slowly, the warmth of it a soft balm in your throat. It's bitter, but the comfort of the ritual is worth more than the taste. You sit back, letting the steam wash over your face, your thoughts drifting like the smoke up into the rafters. The flicker of the firelight makes shadows dance on the walls, shapes that seem to shift and sway with the soft sigh of the wind outside. You watch them for a while, your mind weaving old stories into the dark. Tales of witches who slipped through the forest on silent feet, of cunning women who could heal with nothing more than a whispered word and a cup of steaming brew. Historians still argue whether those healers were truly witches or simply women who knew more about herbs and hope than the men who wrote the histories. In the soft glow of the fire, you think you know the answer, maybe a little of both. The night deepens, and outside the wind begins to moan in the eaves. You pull the stool closer to the hearth, the heat a small comfort against the growing cold. You remember the stories the old women used to tell, the ones that spoke of spirits who roamed the night, slipping between the cracks of the world while the village slept. You shiver a little, though you tell yourself it's just the cold. You tuck the green wool scrap around your wrist tighter, a small, silent talisman against the dark. In a world where the line between truth and story is as thin as the smoke that curls from the hearth, you'll take whatever comfort you can. Your mind drifts to the girl you saw earlier, her eyes bright in the moonlight, the soft curve of her smile. In a place like this, those small glances are as much a cure for the cold as any herb or prayer. You let the memory warm you, a spark in the hush of the hut. You finish the last of the bitter brew, your throat a little easier now, the scratch of the cough dulled by the heat and the herbs. You set the cup down and rest your head against the rough wood of the wall, the fire's soft crackle a lullaby in the quiet. You think of the quiet battle that each day here demands, The weight of the cold, the endless labor, the small, stubborn joys that keep you moving forward. You think of how even the smallest kindness, a cup of warm herbs, a shared smile, a scrap of green wool, can be enough to carry you through the long night. Outside, the wind sighs through the thatch, and you let your eyes slip closed. The world is cold and hard, but in this small space, there is warmth enough to hold you safe until morning. You wake in the dark, the fire burned down to coals, and the hush of the hut thick around you. The cold has crept in while you slept, settling into your bones like an unwelcome guest. You pull your cloak closer, blinking away the last threads of sleep as you listen to the quiet night. Outside, the wind has died to a soft murmur, the moon slipping behind a veil of clouds. You hear the distant howl of a dog, or maybe a wolf, echoing through the forest's edge. It's a sound that slips under your skin, a reminder of the wild world just beyond your small walls. You rise slowly, your breath white in the chill air. You add a few sticks to the hearth, coaxing the coals back to life. The flames catch with a slow sigh, the warm glow spreading soft and low across the floor. You crouch there for a moment, your hands outstretched, feeling the slow bloom of heat in your fingers. The night in medieval times was long and deep, a stretch of hours that tested the spirit as much as the body. Historians agree that medieval people often slept in two shifts, a first sleep and a second, with a quiet hour or two in between. Some say it was a time for prayer, others for quiet talk or small, secret tasks. Some even claim it was a time for dreams to slip through the cracks of the world, carrying whispers of other lives. You sit back on your stool, letting the warmth of the fire wash over you. Your thoughts drift in the hush, half dream and half memory. You think of the girl you saw in the shadows, the way her smile curved in the dark. You think of the boy with the toy horse, his wide eyes bright with wonder. Small flickers of life that glow in the dark like embers. You stretch and stand, moving to the small table where your few possessions rest. You pick up the wooden spoon, tracing the worn curve with your thumb. You think of all the meals it has stirred, the simple comfort of barley porridge and onion stew. Food that's never quite enough, but still a small promise in the cold. You glance around the hut, the rough walls, the patched roof, the small clay pot on the hearth. This is your world, and in the quiet of the night, it feels both impossibly small and boundless as the sky outside. A world built from small tasks and quiet dreams, each breath a small act of defiance against the dark. You hear a faint rustle in the corner and turn your head to see a rat slipping along the edge of the wall. You sigh. Vermin are as much a part of medieval life as bread and water. Historians still argue whether medieval folk truly saw rats as omens or just another nuisance. You're not sure yourself, but you chase it away anyway, a small, fierce act that feels like a victory. The fire crackles softly, the small red coals reflecting in your eyes. You think of the stories your grandmother used to tell on nights like this, tales of spirits and saints, of knights who rode out to battle dragons, and of wise women who healed with nothing but a touch and a whispered word. In the quiet of the night, those stories feel close, like you could reach out and touch them. You pour a little water into the clay cup, the cold bite of it waking you fully. You drink slowly, the taste of earth and stone sharp on your tongue. You set the cup down and close your eyes for a moment, breathing deep, letting the quiet settle into your bones. You think of the tasks that wait for you come dawn, the wood to haul, the goats to tend, the small trade of the market that shapes each day. You think of the small joys that wait too, the smile of a friend, the warmth of a shared bowl of stew, the bright glint of a ribbon at market. In a world like this, it's the small things that keep you moving, the bright threads woven through the rough cloth of each day. You lean back against the wall, the fire's glow soft on your face, and let your mind drift. Outside, the night still stretches on, the dark thick and deep. But here, in this small space, there is warmth enough to keep you safe until the sun rises. You close your eyes, the hush of the hut a gentle lullaby in the cold. And for now, that is enough. You wake to the soft gray of dawn creeping through the cracks in the shutter. The air is cold, sharp enough to make you shiver even before you leave the thin comfort of your blanket. You sit for a moment, letting the pale light seep into your bones, your breath a ghost in the chill. The village is already stirring. You can hear the low murmur of voices outside, the quiet thump of wood on wood as neighbors stack kindling and sweep the mud from their doorways. You rub your hands together, the skin rough and chapped, and rise to meet the day. The morning is a slow crawl of chores. You step outside, your boots sinking in the half-frozen mud. A woman passes you, a basket of kindling on her hip, her eyes red-rimmed from the cold or the smoke of her hearth. You nod, the quiet acknowledgement of those who know that survival is made of small efforts repeated endlessly. The village square is quiet at this hour. The air smells of wet earth and wood smoke, the frost clinging stubbornly to the thatch. A man you know only by his broad shoulders and the hammer at his belt is already at work on a broken gate. His breath clouds the air, each swing of his mallet ringing like a bell in the cold. You pass him by and head to the well. Your hands ache as you draw up the bucket, the rope rough against your palms, the cold water sloshing heavy and biting against your skin. You carry it back to your hut, careful not to spill a drop. Every bit is precious in a world where clean water is a daily labor. Historians agree that medieval people spent much of their lives in these small, repetitive tasks, hauling water, gathering wood, mending what needed mending. But there's a rhythm to it, a quiet dignity in the way each small act weaves into the fabric of the day. You feel it now, the slow pulse of work that holds the world together. Inside, you set the water by the hearth and add a few more sticks to the fire. The flames catch with a low sigh, the warmth a small comfort in the cold. You take a piece of bread from your pouch, stale, but enough to fill your belly for the morning's work. You chew slowly, your mind drifting as you watch the flames dance. You remember the market yesterday, the bright ribbons, and the peddler's easy smile. You think of the boy with the toy horse, his laughter bright in the winter air. These are the small joys that thread through the hard days, bright knots in the weave of the cold. Outside, the church bell tolls, slow and solemn. It's time to gather, to hear the priest's voice echo in the stone walls, his words weaving faith and fear in equal measure. You pull your cloak around you and join the slow stream of neighbors heading to the small church at the village's heart. The air inside is cold and still, the only warmth the faint glow of candles at the altar. You kneel on the worn wood, the smell of old wax and damp stone filling your nose. The priest's voice rises and falls in the quiet, each word a slow drip of comfort and warning. Historians still argue whether medieval faith was driven more by love or by fear of sin. As you listen to the chant of Latin you barely understand, you think it's both. You bow your head and let the rhythm of the words wash over you, your mind half lost in thought. You think of the green scrap of wool at your wrist, the quiet comfort of a shared meal, the soft hush of a song sung by firelight. These small things are your prayer, as much as any words spoken in the cold stone church. The service ends, and you step back into the morning light. The sky has cleared, the pale sun turning the frost to bright glitter. You take a breath, the air sharp and clean, and feel a small spark of warmth deep in your chest. You walk back to your hut slowly, your steps sure and measured. The day waits, with all its small tasks and quiet struggles, and you're ready to meet it. Because in this world of cold and mud, of faith and labor, it's the small acts, the drawing of water, the sharing of bread, the quiet song by the fire, that keep the dark at bay. You pause at your door, your hand on the rough wood, and look out at the village. The thatched roofs, the smoke rising in thin, wavering columns, the quiet murmur of voices. This is your world, and for now it is enough. Now, You step inside the hut once more, the door closing behind you with a soft thud that seems to echo in the hush of the morning. The fire has burned low, its warmth a pale memory in the cold air. You kneel to feed it a few more sticks, coaxing the coals back to life. The glow creeps outward, a small, stubborn light in the gloom. You sit back and stretch your hands towards the warmth, the glow of the fire painting your fingers in soft gold. The hut is still, no voices, no laughter, just the crackle of the flames and the slow beat of your own heart. It's a quiet you've grown used to, a pause between the work and the cold. You stand and move to the small window, wiping away the frost with the edge of your sleeve. Outside, the world is washed in pale light, the frost turning every branch and blade of grass to filigree. You watch for a moment, letting your mind drift. In this quiet hour, even the cold seems beautiful. Each breath of air a bright promise against the hard edge of winter. The chores call, though, as they always do. You gather your basket and step outside, your boots crunching in the brittle frost. The chickens cluck softly as you pass, their feathers fluffed against the cold. You scatter a handful of grain and watch them peck, their small bodies a small, fierce defiance of the winter's hunger. The goat bleats as you come near, her breath a cloud in the cold air. You rub her head, your fingers finding the soft spot behind her ears. She leans into your touch, her body warm and solid in the morning light. You check her water, breaking the thin skin of ice that's formed overnight, and pour in a fresh bucket from the well. Historians still argue whether medieval folk saw their animals as partners in survival or simply as food and labor. But in this moment, with your fingers buried in the goat's warm coat, you know it's both. She gives you milk and warmth, and in return, you keep her fed and safe from the cold. You pause for a moment, your hand resting on her shoulder, and think of the other small creatures that share this world with you. Rats in the walls, birds in the eaves, the thin red fox you glimpsed at the forest's edge last night. Each one a small, stubborn life clinging to the cold earth. You finish your chores and head back to the hut, the sun creeping higher, the pale sky slowly brightening to soft blue. You pass a neighbor chopping wood, his breath coming in slow clouds as he works. He pauses to nod at you, his face lined with cold and effort, and you nod back. No words needed in the quiet understanding of another morning survived. Back inside, the hut is warm now, the fire crackling bright. You set your basket down and pour a cup of water, the taste of earth and stone grounding you in the slow, steady rhythm of the day. You think of the market tomorrow, the promise of a few coins traded for a handful of onions or a new pair of woolen mitts. Small things, but each one a step forward. You sit by the fire and mend the frayed edge of your cloak, your needle flashing in the soft glow. The rhythm of the stitch soothes you, each pull and push of the thread a small act of creation in a world that asks so much. You think of the girl with the bright eyes in the shadows last night, of the boy with the toy horse, of the songs that wove through the air in the alehouse. These are the bright threads that make the cold bearable, the small joys that stitch your days together. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants truly found beauty in their days, or if it was just survival and drudgery. But as you sit there, the fire's warmth on your face, and the slow, steady rhythm of the needle in your hand, you know that beauty isn't something that lives only in cathedrals and tapestries. It lives in small acts, an onion shared, a song hummed low by the hearth, a scrap of green wool tied around your wrist. You tie off the last stitch and set the cloak aside, your breath slow and even in the warm air. Outside, the wind picks up again, rattling the shutter, but inside, there is only the quiet crackle of the fire and the soft hum of your own thoughts. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of the day settle in your bones. You let it in, the cold and the warmth, the quiet and the laughter, the small, fierce hope that lives even in the hardest seasons. You open your eyes and stand, the warmth of the fire holding you close as you pull your cloak tighter. There's still more to do today, and the cold doesn't wait for anyone. You take a last look at the hearth, the small red coals pulsing like a heartbeat, and then you step outside once more. The sun is higher now, the frost beginning to melt in slow, glistening drops that turn the muddy paths to slick rivers of brown. The village is alive with the quiet hum of work, voices raised in greeting, the clatter of wooden buckets, the low bleat of goats, and the soft cluck of chickens. You make your way to the square, where the last of the morning's market is winding down. A woman stands behind a stall, her hands red from the cold as she sells handfuls of dried herbs tied with twine. You pause to watch her work, the gentle precision of her fingers a small, quiet beauty in the gray day. She sees you watching and smiles, the lines at the corners of her eyes deepening. You nod in return, a silent exchange of warmth in a world that can feel so cold. You trade a few coins for a bundle of rosemary, the sharp green scent bright in the cold air. She thanks you with a quiet word, and you tuck the bundle into your pouch, a small promise of flavor for the thin stew that waits in your pot. You wander through the market, the smell of smoked fish and damp earth thick around you. A man hawks wooden bowls, his voice rough but kind as he jokes with a young boy tugging at his mother's hand. Another woman offers a small loaf of bread, the crust still warm from the communal oven. You buy it, the weight of it in your hand a small comfort as you walk on. Mainstream historians agree that medieval markets were more than just places to trade goods. They were where stories were traded too. You hear them now, slipping through the air like threads of color in the gray. A farmer boasts of a sow that bore 12 piglets in the night. A man swears he's seen a bright star fall from the sky. A sign, he says, though of what, he isn't sure. A woman hums a song as she packs her wares, her voice low and sweet, the tune catching in your ear. You pause to listen, the melody simple and old. It's a song you've heard before, one your grandmother used to sing as she worked the loom. You hum along under your breath, the words a soft comfort against the cold. You make your way back towards the edge of the square, the bread and rosemary a small triumph in your hands. You pass the blacksmith's forge, the steady ring of hammer on iron, a bright note in the morning air. The blacksmith nods as you pass, his face hidden behind the glow of his work. You nod back, the quiet bond of those who know the weight of the cold. You stop for a moment to watch him work, the sparks flying in bright arcs as he shapes a blade. You wonder who will carry it, what hands will hold it in the nights to come. You think of the way each tool, each piece of iron, is a promise of survival, a small defiance of the dark. You leave the square and head back through the narrow lanes, your breath a slow cloud in the air. You think of the rosemary in your pouch, the bread in your hand, the small fire waiting in your hearth. These are your treasures, the small bright things that stitch your day together. Historians still argue whether medieval folk had dreams beyond the next meal, the next dawn. But you know that even in the smallest of lives, there are dreams, bright as the morning frost, fleeting but fierce. You think of the girl with the green wool scarf, of the boy and his toy horse, of the songs that fill the alehouse at night. Dreams enough to carry you through the coldest days. You step back into your hut, the door closing behind you with a quiet finality. The fire is low, but it still glows, a small promise in the cold. You set down your bundle of bread and rosemary, your breath soft and slow in the quiet. You take a deep breath and let it out, the weight of the day settling into your shoulders. And as you sit by the hearth, the smell of rosemary sharp and sweet in the warm air, you know that even in this hard, cold world, there is still beauty enough to hold you safe. You settle by the hearth, the bread and rosemary laid out before you like a small feast in the cold hush of the hut. You tear off a piece of bread, the crust hard but the inside soft and warm, and you chew slowly, the taste of the earth and the oven grounding you in this moment. You add the rosemary to the pot, the sharp green scent rising in the steam that curls from the thin stew. It's a small luxury, but in a world like this, even a single sprig of rosemary can feel like a feast day. You stir it slowly, the wooden spoon worn smooth by years of careful work. Outside, the village moves in its slow, steady rhythm. You hear the soft murmur of voices, the faint clatter of a bucket against the well's stone lip, the thin wail of a child who's slipped in the mud and is now being gently scolded by her mother. These small sounds are the heartbeat of the village, as sure and steady as your own. The sun has climbed higher, turning the frost to bright water that drips from the eaves in slow, shining beads. You watch it for a moment, the glint of it like bright coins falling from the sky. You remember the merchant's bright ribbons at the market, the glint of beads and copper and tin, small bits of color and light in a world that is often gray. Historians agree that medieval life was a constant balance between the small comforts and the hard edge of survival. You feel that balance now, the thin stew thickening with the rosemary, the crust of bread in your hand, the quiet hum of voices outside. It's enough, for now. You pause as you eat, the warmth of the fire soft against your face. You think of the manor on the hill, the way its stone walls rise above the village like a quiet promise or a quiet threat, depending on how the Lord looks at you. You think of the taxes you owe, the small coin that will leave your hand and never come back. But you push that thought away for now. There's work enough for today. You finish the bread slowly, letting each bite settle warm in your belly. Then you set the bowl aside and stand, the weight of the day's work settling into your shoulders like an old cloak. You take a last moment by the fire, your fingers resting on the edge of the pot, the steam rising soft and fragrant around your face. You step outside, the sun bright but cold, the air sharp against your skin. The village is moving in a slow dance of chores and small talk. A man patches his roof, the thatch bundled and tied with careful hands. A woman combs her daughter's hair in the doorway of their hut, her fingers quick and gentle. You nod to them as you pass, your steps sure on the muddy path. You head towards the edge of the village, where the fields stretch out, brown and waiting under the pale sky. The earth is hard, frozen still, but you know that soon it will soften, and the work of planting will begin again. For now, you walk the edge of it, your eyes tracing the slow curve of the hills, the dark line of the forest in the distance. You pause by the forest's edge, the hush of it deep and green even in winter. The trees stand like quiet watchers, their bare branches a lacework against the sky. You remember the stories of spirits that slip through the trees, of wise women who speak with the wind and know the secret names of herbs and roots. Historians still debate whether those stories were superstition or memory, but as you stand there, you feel the old weight of them settle into your bones. You kneel to gather a bundle of kindling, your fingers stiff with cold but careful. Each twig, each branch, a small promise of warmth in the long night to come. You work slowly, your breath soft clouds in the cold, your mind drifting on the hush of the forest around you. When your basket is full, you stand and turn back towards the village, your steps steady on the narrow path. The sun is already slipping lower, the light turning the mud to bright gold. You pause for a moment to watch it, the quiet beauty of it, a soft ache in your chest. You think of the green wool at your wrist, the rosemary in your stew, the song that still hums low in your memory. These are the small things that hold you here, the bright threads that weave you into this cold, quiet world. You walk back to your hut, the basket of kindling warm against your side. The fire waits, the stew waits, the small, stubborn glow of a life lived one breath, one kindness, one small act at a time. You step back into your hut, the door closing softly behind you, shutting out the cold and the quiet murmur of the village beyond. The fire has burned low while you were gone, the coals a soft, pulsing red in the shadows. You set down your basket of kindling and kneel, feeding the small, stubborn flame back to life. The flicker of the fire grows, the warmth creeping back into the cold corners of the hut. You sit back on your stool, your hands resting on your knees, the quiet of the room wrapping around you like a cloak. The stew still simmers in the pot, the scent of rosemary and onions a soft promise in the air. You think of the manor on the hill, its cold stone walls, and the Lord who holds your fate in his ringed hand. You think of the taxes that wait, the way the weight of his demands settles on every shoulder in the village like the winter's chill. Historians agree that medieval lords ruled as much by fear as by right, their power woven into every breath you take. But you also think of the way the market hums with quiet defiance, the way neighbors share scraps of bread and small smiles even under the cold eye of the manor. You think of the small kindnesses that light the dark, like the girl who shared her last onion with you, or the boy who gave you the wooden horse that still sits by your hearth. In a world like this, it's those small acts that keep you warm. You stand and take the pot from the hearth, the heat seeping into your hands as you set it on the rough wooden table. You tear a scrap of bread and dip it into the stew, the taste of rosemary and earth filling your mouth. You eat slowly, savoring each bite as though it's a feast. In a way, it is. The quiet stretches around you, the fire's crackle, and the soft scrape of your spoon, the only sounds. You think of the songs you heard in the alehouse, the way the voices rose and fell like the tide. You hum one softly to yourself, the melody curling in the warm air. You glance around the hut, the patched walls, the worn table, the small clay cup by your hand. It's not much, but it's yours. Each piece of it shaped by your hands, each mark on the wood a small testament to the quiet, stubborn life you've built here. You remember the stories your grandmother used to tell, how each hut in the village has its own small spirit, a quiet watcher who keeps the warmth in and the cold at bay. Historians still argue whether these were just stories to keep children quiet at night, or if they were a quiet faith in a world that offered little else. You smile to yourself, thinking of the hush of the hut, the way it feels like it holds you safe in its rough, worn walls. You finish the last of the stew, wiping the bowl clean with the last scrap of bread. You lean back in your chair, your belly warm, and your mind drifting on the slow rhythm of the fire's glow. Outside, the sun has slipped low, the light turning the world to soft shadow. You hear the faint echo of the church bell, calling the last prayers of the day. You think of the cold stone walls and the flicker of candles, the low voice of the priest weaving faith and fear in equal measure. You bow your head for a moment, your thoughts a quiet prayer. Not the grand words of the priest, but a small, simple hope for warmth, for a kind word, for one more day to watch the sun rise and set over the muddy lanes of the village. You stand and tend the fire one last time, the soft glow of it warming your face. You glance at the small wooden horse on the shelf, its simple shape a bright memory in the hush of the room. You close your eyes for a moment, the warmth of the fire and the soft ache of your tired muscles carrying you forward. Outside, the night is cold and still, the world waiting in quiet darkness. Inside, you are warm and fed, the hush of the hut a gentle promise that, for tonight at least, you are safe. The fire flickers low, a last bright spark against the gathering dark. You sit close to it, the red glow warm on your face, and listen to the quiet sigh of the night pressing in around your small world. Outside, the moon has risen, casting a soft silver glow over the thatched roofs and the muddy lanes. You imagine the village sleeping, each small hut holding its own hush of breath and quiet dreams. Even the goats and chickens seem to have settled, their soft sounds muted in the stillness. You lean back in your stool, your hands wrapped around the clay cup, and let the slow peace of the evening seep into your bones. There's nothing more to be done tonight. No wood to chop, no water to haul, no bread to bake. Just the slow beat of your own breath, the quiet crackle of the last coals, and the soft whisper of the wind outside. Historians still debate how medieval folk faced the long, cold nights, whether they found comfort in prayer, in stories, or simply in the warmth of another's hand. You think of the stories you heard in the alehouse, of the songs that rose and fell in the dim light, of the laughter that flickered like a spark in the cold. And you know that even here, in the quiet of your hut, those stories keep the night at bay. You stand and move to the small chest near the door, the worn wood smooth under your fingers. Inside are your treasures, the scrap of green wool tied around your wrist, the wooden horse you traded for at market, the small icon of a saint with a face worn soft by time. You touch each one gently, a quiet litany of the small things that hold your life together. You tuck them back in their places, the weight of them a comfort in your hands, and return to your stool. You close your eyes for a moment, the hush of the hut wrapping around you like a blanket. Outside, the wind rattles the shutter, but you're warm here, the last glow of the fire holding the cold at bay. You think of tomorrow, the work that waits, the market that hums with small promises, the soft green hope of spring that even now stirs in the hard earth. You think of the boy with the toy horse, the girl in the shadows, the way each small kindness weaves you deeper into the quiet fabric of the village. You take a slow breath, the smoke and rosemary thick in the air, and let your thoughts drift. Outside, the night is long and cold, but here, in this small space, there is warmth enough to carry you through until morning. And in that warmth, in that hush, you find a quiet peace. The cold may come again, the days may be hard, but for now, just for tonight, you are safe, you are warm, and you are not alone. The glow of the fire fades, and you settle deeper into your seat, your breath slow and easy in the quiet night. Outside, the moon casts its soft light over the village, the silver glow turning the muddy paths to rivers of pearl. The wind sighs through the thatch, a gentle hush that seems to whisper you to sleep. You let your eyes drift closed, the crackle of the last coals a lullaby in the dark. You think of the simple comforts of this night, the taste of warm bread, the scent of rosemary in the stew, the quiet hum of a neighbor's voice sharing a story by the fire. Small things, but they are the stitches that hold your world together, each one a bright thread against the cold. The night stretches on, deep and still. You feel the weight of the day slipping from your shoulders, the slow ache of your muscles giving way to a soft, heavy calm. Outside, the world turns slowly, the moon rising higher, the stars wheeling in their quiet dance. And inside, you are safe in your small hut, wrapped in the hush of the night and the gentle warmth of the fire. You take one last breath, slow and deep, and let it go. The world beyond your door will wait for you in the morning, but for now, there is only this small circle of warmth, this quiet breath of peace. The last of the coals flickers in the hearth, the glow a soft promise in the dark. You close your eyes, and the hush of the night settles around you like a soft blanket. And in that hush, in that slow, steady breath, you drift away, safe, warm, and at peace, warm and at